I'm Megan Marlena, and we're at Cal State Long Beach University Art Museum's benefit fundraiser. It's called Wide Angle 2 at V2O Nightclub in Long Beach. There's a lot happening here tonight, a lot to look forward to. And joining me right now is the director of the University Art Museum, Chris Scotes. And how you doing tonight? I know there's a lot on your plate this evening.
This is going to be great fun. This is going to be an amazing event, and we're very honored to have three amazing guests with us here in Long Beach: Todd Mackover, Robert Pinsky, and James Madalena. And as you know, they're working on the first digital robotic opera, Death and the Powers, and they're going to premiere 20 minutes of new music, and I think this is going to be a very, very special evening.
The University Art Museum is a unique venue for the campus and for the community. It is the University Art Museum is doing cutting-edge things. This event, with three marvelous, internationally known artists, doing the first robotic opera, is just so exciting, and we're so pleased that we're having the opera is not going to be first presented until 2009. So we're getting a real sneak preview this evening, and we're just thrilled that it's here in the University Art Museum at Cal State Long Beach in the city of Long Beach.
Now I'm with Helen Lorenzini, who is a University Art Museum advisory board member. But more than that, she is the chair of this evening's event, Wide Angle 2. And Helen, looking around the room here at Club V2O in Long Beach, I cannot imagine the work that went into this evening. It looks amazing in here. There's so many people having a wonderful time. It must be so rewarding for you to see all your hard work come to fruition now.
It absolutely is. It's absolutely thrilling to have this event actually occurring tonight at this moment. It's almost like an army that was needed to put this together, and I am absolutely thrilled the way everything looks. The art is fabulous that we have for auction, and I'm particularly thrilled to have Todd Mackover, the composer from MIT Media Lab, present a sneak preview of Death and the Powers, and James Madalena, the baritone. It is absolutely incredible, and also on top of that, to have Robert Pinsky with us, the poet laureate.
Hello, my name is Mark Swed, and my guests today are Todd Mackover, who is the composer of Death and the Powers, and James Madalena, who will be singing in this new robotic opera. And let me begin, Todd. What is a robotic opera?
Well, we're inventing it, so nobody knows yet. But it's not what you might expect. It's not an opera with robots playing characters on stage. Something else. When I first started thinking of this project, I've done several operas which are as varied as you might find in the opera world. I did a science fiction opera. I did an opera called the Brain Opera, where the audience gets to participate. I remember you were at Resurrection, which was kind of a traditional opera.
Yes.
And this one, I wanted to, my very first image of this particular project was to have an opera where the stage would actually help tell the story. So I've tried many different ways of moving theatrical technique and the way an opera looks and feels and sounds into the 21st century. And one thing, I've worked a lot with technology, but the feel of technology is not something which attracts me very much. I like things which feel real and physical, and so I didn't want to have an opera with big screens that would take a character on stage. And we're so used to seeing cinema where we can see close-ups, and the only way that we know how to do that on stage is to take a picture of somebody with a video camera and blow it up. But that never feels very lively to me. So I wanted something where objects, maybe very large objects, could help tell the story almost as if Fantasia came to life physically. So that was the first image, and then with Robert Pinsky, the poet, I asked him to work with me on this project. I also wanted a project where the story, the narrative, was maybe more impressionistic than a typical opera libretto or stage play might be. So I went to Robert, who's a poet, rather than to a novelist or a playwright. And we started thinking about an opera where these objects might represent a person, and the real question that interested me and still does with this project is what kind of legacy can each of us leave? What happens when you get older and decide what your life adds up to? How do you think about that for yourself? And even more importantly, how do you decide what to share with others, with your family, with other generations? How do you put that in some form, and what can be shared and what can't? So this opera is about a person, Simon Powers, who is near the end of his life. He's powerful, he's rich, he's successful, he's slightly creepy, a little bit like Walt Disney meets Howard Hughes meets Bill Gates or somebody like that. And he's obsessed not so much with staying alive forever, but he wants everything about himself to stay in the world. And so what he does is figures out a way to basically disappear and put everything about himself, his memories, his influence, his personality, into his environment. So the robot in the opera is actually the entire stage, because the stage comes alive. The Simon Powers, the main character, disappears, and everything around him turns into himself. That's what his legacy is. So the robot is everything in the whole opera. The stage comes alive.
I met the composer, Todd Mockover, at a reading I gave. We were both vacationed on Cape Cod. I gave a reading in a church in Wellfleet. Todd was there. I knew his music. And Todd asked me, and I love the music, and he's a wonderful composer, and it was a chance to do something different. I had never had much to do with opera. Mm-hmm. And since Todd is at the Media Lab at MIT, and one of the people he introduced me to was Cynthia Brazil, a young woman who's a leading roboticist, we decided that it would be fun to have an opera with, and as it turns out, performed by robots in the story. They're live singers, but in the story, what you see is a big machine comes onto the stage at the beginning, and it disassembles itself into separate robots. And the head robot says, okay, the human creators, when they left, said we had to perform this every few years, so let's do it. And one of the robots says, I don't get this thing about death. What's that? So, I don't get that. And he says, well, don't worry, it's a hard concept. And then they become the singers. They morph into the singers, and they perform our story.
my horse, my hound, what will I do when you are fallen? Where will I sleep? How will I ride? What will I hunt? Where can I go without my mount? All eager and quick, how will I know in the thicket ahead is danger or treasure? When Body, my good bright dog, is semi-immortal Mace Wentz, I'll be more immortal than her of that peculiar bird, the immortal William Yeats. Now, see you later.
So how does this work, this idea of kind of leaving your DNA in the universe? I mean, you've been at MIT Media Lab for what, around 20 years now?
That's right, yep.
And involved in the most kind of cutting edge forms of technology and its interaction with music and art. But what exactly, how exactly does that, the technology, hold, you know, this DNA, this influence, this, I mean, we're talking about tangible and non-tangible kinds of aspects of a personality.
Right. So one of the mysteries, one of the things we're trying to do is to concentrate on the less tangible aspects. So the set looks like kind of an abstraction of a library. They're very large walls, and the walls have things that look like books on them. They're actually made out of resin or plexiglass, so they actually can have projections on the sides of them, so they can change color and change form. But we're going to show very few. So one thing you might do is have DNA be explicit memories. You could imagine musical memories or visual memories, little ones, big ones on a large scale. What I'm more interested in is conveying gesture and breath and the kind of feel you get around a human being, but conveyed to some other form. So we've designed these huge walls so that they vibrate and undulate. The walls are, again, robotic, but not in any sense you'd imagine. Each of these books on the wall is actually on a little motor. So the books slide in and out and tilt back and forth. As they do that, they create very complex patterns, very beautiful patterns, and they also make sound. So another thing I'm interested in this project is transforming a human musical performance through, we build these things called hyper instruments. So somebody will perform, typically an instrument of mine, the music might be expanded through loudspeakers. In this case, almost everything that gets expanded is physical. So the walls themselves are like a big percussion orchestra. The walls actually make sound as they move around. There's a big chandelier in the middle of the set, which looks like a chandelier at first, but it can actually open up and dance, and it's a very complex string instrument. It has about 200 very, very long strings on it, kind of like longer. Actually, the shortest string is longer than a piano string, and it has many little objects, little actuators on the instrument that pluck the strings and vibrate the strings, tickle the strings in a variety of ways. So there's this huge physical environment that basically moves. It's choreographed. The gestures of this wall, the big parts of the wall is moving, and then little bits of it shaking and rippling and turning into forms, are meant to feel like exactly what Jim, who's the main character, Simon Powers, exactly the way he expresses himself.
And what about Jim being in the midst of all of this technology? Now, you've played other, I won't say creepy, but unusual and difficult and important characters in the past, including you created the role of Nixon in Nixon in China.
Yes.
John Adams opera, very famous. What is your role in this? Who is Simon Powers, and how do you feel about being in all this technology?
Well, I mean, we're finding out who Simon Powers is bit by bit, but I'm really excited to be involved with all this technology. I'm kind of like a science junkie, although I was never very good at it, good at math, but I'm so impressed with people who have math as a second language, you know. And I watch Nova, is one of my favorite shows on TV, and when I found out that Cynthia Brazil, who's like one of the foremost robotics scientists in the world, who was on this Nova show, was involved in this project. I mean, it's very exciting, but it's mysterious. I know little bits and pieces about it, but it'll be an adventure.
The sets, they explode, they change, because this lead character, who is a cajillionaire who wants to have his consciousness converted into software.
Wow, that's interesting.
His body is worn out, so his consciousness, his mind, his memory are all going to go into this system. He's going to become information, which is what we are in some level. And the information that is his personality, his memories, his mind, more or less goes into the set. So though he'll appear from time to time, the set needs to feel very alive, and I think Alex has succeeded in doing that.
Closer. Harder. Closer. Search it. Search. Memory temper. Torturous squire. Dismember the fire. No matter the matter. I did that. I am the same. The need and the matter. Touch and desire. Doing, undoing. Dissemble the fire. Remember, I did that much in a while. The closer the higher. What was the matter? Scorched in the circuit, disbanded. Remember, I am the same. Touch too much, unremembered. As I draw near, touch not enough. The light expiring, that matter encumbered. Remember the circle of tiny torch, lighting the chamber where I am the same.
And how would you describe the vibe for those who aren't here?
The vibe of this place is so incredible because we have a lot of artists here tonight, and to me that just is, it's all about creativity, and it's a really different place.
Why is it important to have an institution that offers modern art and contemporary art to the Long Beach community?
Well, any society that continues on needs art, all forms of art, both performing and visual art. Otherwise it becomes stale, stagnant. And with the UAM, they're very involved in combining art along with technology and science. And that's what Chris Coates, the director, brings to this museum. And his foresight in the next 10 to 15 years will really help out society just by bringing those three items together.
What kind of role do you think the University Art Museum should play here in the local community?
Big one. And we're planning on moving the University Art Museum off campus in about 4 years. We have a site downtown. We're going to go from about 5,000 square feet to 40,000 square feet, and we have huge support from the university, the president of the university, F. King Alexander, and support from the city. And we plan on being the museum in this region for contemporary art, art and technology, music, film, and pop culture.
Wow, that's really exciting. So 4 years' time.
Yeah, we're working on it right now, and this kind of benefit this evening is a way to bring together friends and donors and really support the programs that we're working on.
Well, let's talk about tonight's event. You having fun so far?
Absolutely, yes, wonderful time, and the night is young, but we're having a great time, yes.
What are you most looking forward to this evening?
Well, I think this wonderful performance, the live performance we have, and I'm intrigued to see what digital opera is all about, and it's something very distinct. I like opera, but probably the more traditional opera in that sense. So I'm fascinated by what we're seeing this evening, and just to see some friends, and I would expect there'll be a lot of people who are really new to the art museum, so to spread the word as well.
Anything else you'd like to add on the event or the museum?
No, I just, if anybody's watching this, just to encourage them to actually come and see the collection at the museum. It really is a fabulous collection. They have some wonderful exhibits periodically as well, but to support it and, yes, just become aware. But no, we're going to have a great time this evening.
Jim, you have created a number of roles, 3 operas for John Adams, and the first Nixon in China, you were Nixon, very famous role. Talk about what's involved in creating a new role. You kind of have a blank, you're coming in with somewhat, you have no tradition, but still there's a lot to do.
Yeah, well, in the instance of Nixon, of course, there was a lot of research because this is a person, this is an American icon. So you know,
and everyone was startled by how much of Nixon you were.
Well, when you spend a couple of years reading every book that was ever written about,
but the body language and everything.
Yeah. Well, I remember him. I'm old enough to really remember having seen him on television a lot. But with him, I looked at tons of still photographs because I found that to be more useful than videotape, because you can really see this frozen thought behind the eyes. So Nixon was a historical character, so there was a lot of research involved. Other characters, the no tradition part is really the most fun part for me, because you're really free to do what you want with it. And you know, when you're doing a role like Don Giovanni or the Count, you know, there's certain things that people expect of you, and so it's more restraining. But I love doing new music. I always did, from my college days. I liked working with live composers, and I just, at a very early age, I just decided I wanted to be part of my generation musically, and not just, I love doing the old masters, but that's sort of become my fach is doing new music.
And so how do you prepare for a role like this?
I don't know yet. I mean, you know, you obviously have to learn the music and just play with it. I don't know yet. I'll just have to see, you know, when I see the rest of the libretto and figure out more about this character, then.
Yeah, I think directors are always crucial as collaborators for creating a role like this. And Diane Paulus, who's the director for this project, one of the reasons I like her so much is, well, for instance, the little preview we did of this in Monte Carlo, just 4 characters on stage, no scenery at all, and I thought she was fantastic in working with all of you at. You know, just honing in on little movements, human, very, very pertinent things that brought the character out.
It's just fun, since he's a fictional character, then we just make him up together.
Yeah.
And you know, it's just like playing. It's fun.
Yeah, and also since it's, Robert Pinsky is extremely playful and he's a wonderful person to work with. A couple of things come to mind. One is, since this is an opera about this guy who's leaving his legacy, we can just send email back and forth about backstory about this person that never necessarily ends up. Nobody says the words, and maybe you never see these things. But you know, I can write them.
You should CC those to me.
Yep, absolutely. That's a good.
Because I haven't talked to Robert about this. That's the other element, as you know, he's going to have a lot of input about the final product.
Yeah.
And this was a surprising choice in a way. At least to me, it would seem a surprising choice that you would have picked Robert Pinsky, who was the poet laureate of the United States, and not someone I would immediately connect with this kind of a project. Talk about how and why he came about as the librettist.
I think my first impulse was I wanted a real. I wanted a real freedom with the way of structuring the text in this opera. I had the feeling that a lot of the story would be told through visuals and through music, and not necessarily with. I knew there'd be moments where we would stage scenes and have a traditional narrative, but I also had a feeling there would be large bits of the opera. I mean, we're talking about this transmutation of a human being into some other realm. We're talking about being bathed in somebody's personality, memories. So I wanted a poet, and he's one of my very favorite poets. I just really love his work. I love it for being precise, articulate, worldly, but also able to be fantastical. So that was my, and actually the first time I met with him, I called him out of the blue. We'd met once, but didn't really know each other, and I just said, look, I have this idea for a project, and here's the basic idea. He said, yeah, this sounds great, let's talk some more, I'd love to work on it, but I've got to tell you, I'm not a storyteller. I don't make up stories all the time, so maybe that's a problem. So first of all, it turns out he is a pretty good storyteller, but we actually brought in somebody else named Randy Weiner, who is a dramaturge. That's what he does, is he makes up stories. And so he's actually, mentioned, right, I mean, he's a core part of the creative team. He and Robert worked very closely together to make a story and then turned it into this libretto. So I think the team of the two of them worked very well. And then the creative team in general, since so much of this, a lot of the story is told by how these walls behave, how they become his character, how the whole set moves, how these instruments are built. Myself, Alex McDowell, the designer, Diane Paulus, the director, Robert, Randy, and I have all worked more closely together as a team than normally one would.
So how did you go about approaching this project? What were some of your goals?
The first thing we did was have many, many meetings with associates and graduate students of Todd's. And those were so interesting and so pointless that after about a year of that, we hired supposedly a script doctor, Randy Weiner, basically a shrink for me. And he said, why don't you just write this thing? It sounds okay to me. So I put it into the keyboard and gave it to Todd. And that's the story of Death in the Powers, Megan.
Remember, touch and desire, disassembled memory, as I draw nearer, over and over, and over and over, and over, and over, and over, and over, over and over and over, couched in a wire, closer and higher, search it in the circuit, dismembered apart. Remember, resembled ensemble, assembled entire, resembled ensemble, assembled in time, resembled ensemble, assembled in time, trembling to acquire a semblance of fire. Remember, memory, remember whatever I did that, I did that, and I am the same, 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 I am.
This doesn't sound like a completely new departure for you when I'm thinking of your first opera, Valis, which is based on a Philip K. Dick novel and about another unusual paranoid character, and kind of the theme of, the universe is information, I think, is an important line in that.
Yeah.
And so this seems to almost be picking up on that. Also, something that this includes that goes way back in your work is the idea of hyper instruments, which I guess you began building one in the early 90s, was that?
Probably even late 80s, yeah.
Instruments in which you electronically extend the range and many other things they can do. Talk about hyper instruments and how they'll be used in this, because these are a new form of them, right?
Yes. So actually, hyper instruments started in the Valis opera, which I was premiered at the end of 1987 for the 10th anniversary of the Pompidou Center. And that was another project where I had a great deal of freedom to think about how to make an opera. The Pompidou Center asked for this opera. Very early on, I decided to stage it not in one of their theaters, but in the giant open entrance hall of the Pompidou. So we built a theater from scratch. The staging was all electronic in that. We had projections and monitors all over. And for the orchestra, I really wanted rich, complex sound, and lots of it, but I wanted to be able to rehearse it like a rock band. So every time I kept hitting a wall when I was thinking of using a chamber orchestra with interactive electronics, and the very limited amount of rehearsal time you always have to get something just right. So I kept reducing the amount of instruments and ended up with an orchestra of 2 people, one percussionist, one keyboard player. And because of that, I thought of this idea of how you could take a virtuosic musician, measure the performance, measure the interpretation, and use that for that single performer to control a much larger palette of sound or detail or layering than you could normally, and that turned into hyper instruments. And I've been developing those in a lot of ways ever since. We still build. I just finished a project with Matt Heimovitz, the cellist. We built a new hyper cello, and so that's kind of the latest. There's still a line of professional instruments. I got very interested in building these kind of instruments for music lovers who aren't virtuosic musicians. So
and also for children, right?
And for children. And actually my big interest right now, which connects a lot with Death and the Powers, is so we did a lot of work over the last 5 years with children building special music toys and something like Hyperscore, where children can compose.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
But right now I'm really interested in seniors. I'm really interested in well, I am. I'm interested in,
It's what you were talking about at the other event about the Alzheimer's.
Well, yeah, very generally, children, we're all interested in children. It's and musically in particular, it's fantastic to think of a way that children can start life in music with joy and actively participating rather than, taking lessons for many years before you have any fun. But I'm really interested, I'm 53 myself now, and I'm just quite, my parents are getting older and I'm just interested in the fact that it's much less well defined what a meaningful life means through the 60s, 70s, 80s. And we're going to live to 100, and health is one very, health is a very important part of it. But spiritually and in terms of engagement and what the shape of our lives are, and that, to me, that's a very, very deep interest and open question. And to me, that's actually what this opera is about. And in fact, one of my ideas that we're starting to develop now is that this system that Simon Powers builds for himself, I'm quite interested in making this system. We built Hyperscore as a graphic composing tool where kids can make their own music. But I'm thinking of this system as a new kind of creative tool where maybe other people can come and use it as a way of showing what their legacy is, or shape. Maybe it's an environment that allows people to make an opera of their own life. Let's say that's one thing that I'm. So in some ways, this project, we've got 2 years before it opens. It is going to develop into something I can't quite predict now. But I think it's fair to say that there are elements of Valis and there are elements even of the brain opera that are going to turn up, mutated and pushed further in this project. That's my guess.
And this opera will open in Monte Carlo in 2009, and then it will travel to other parts of the Europe, U.S., Asia.
Yes. And we hope to the West Coast, not sure yet.
And it's designed in some way to fit in various different kinds of spaces as well.
It is. On the other hand, and it's designed, like Valis was, to be self-contained. So it's got all this technology, but the technology is being designed to fold up and travel. But these walls are pretty big. They really are. And it's not something designed for a high school auditorium. I mean, you need a big enough stage and fairly intricate theatrical infrastructure, I would say.
Well, thank you very much. I want to thank James Maddalena and Todd Mockover, and I'm Mark Swed. Thank you.
Well, the UAM's mission is so fascinating and so interesting in how it combines the visual arts with music and multimedia, and I think the art auction just brings the focus back to the fact that it is an art museum and it is really active in the art community, both in Long Beach and in the Los Angeles area. So I think it just reminds everyone that even though we have this incredible presentation and production, it is an art museum, and we're all about helping out artists and the arts and raising awareness. So I think that brings it home.
Well, tonight we're here to support the Cal State Long Beach University Art Museum. And as someone who's dedicated your life's work to art, and more specifically poetry, why do you feel it's important to gather at events like this and show support for our art institutions?
An exciting thing about American culture, and California culture perhaps in particular, is that we're still creating it. It's not finished. It's very important in this country because it's what holds us together. We're not one race, we're not one religion. Our language is named after another country. You could say both of our languages, since we're in Southern California, the second the most spoken language also is named after a different country.
True.
And we are held together by the things we memorize and prize and admire. Our movies, our jazz music, which is probably our greatest cultural accomplishment. Things like the poetry of Emily Dickinson and Walt Whitman, and our great visual artists, which we now have an increasingly large tradition of. So for an American city like Long Beach, a center like a museum is part of a very exciting ongoing project, something that is still happening.